way. Now what you think. So first, on the policing side, I mentioned yesterday that I think that we're at a point now where it's been proven that the policing model that we have now is inadequate for the sake of safety and security. It is not a holistic practice. It is not a holistic program. It is very much so a monolithic piece, route with corruption and folks who are really there to be authoritarian and not necessarily be of service to the community. Being of service in the community is not just catching criminals. Being of service to community is also being there to make sure that the community has a sense of safety and security, whether there's criminals there or not. You don't need criminality isn't a direct correlation to things being insecure or unsafe, because there's different levels to criminality. It's a difference if you have some wild axe murderer running through the streets, Halloween style, versus some white collar crime or something like that, or somebody running a stop sign is very dangerous. You actually should be getting reprimanded for that. Don't run stop signs or stoplights. And I also, in the midst of this, I want you to look at my face and look at my presence. I'm still humorous. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm not vengeful. I'm still the same me, right? But I am tired. I'm tired of this. So my response yesterday to this was there needs to be a new model of policing that out-innovates, out-entrepreneurs, out-profits, that outdoes the current system of policing to make the current system obsolete, right? To take away their jobs. Not by getting police arrested, not by getting people thrown off the force, not by changing laws, right, to get police to behave better overall, not to set up some type of initiative to get the good cops to stand up against the bad cops. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about create a separate institution that outcompetes them, that does their job at 10x to the point where they can't compete, right? Using a model, if you look at a disruptive model, if you want to be techie about it. And what does that look like, right? And what is the process towards that? And what is the schedule and the timeline that we're doing? We already have enough reasons. We got Ahmaud Arbery. We got George Floyd. We got LaShonda. There's a list of names, right, of people who have been destroyed by the current model of policing. And there's no way to fix it, right? All of these kind of inclusivity and training models and all these different things, they don't work. There are police officers who don't know how to handle a gun. There's police officers who don't have, just innately, they are not sociable people, and they're in positions where you have to be social. If you're a beat cop, you have to be social. If you're in a cruiser and you're in uniform, you have to be social. You're not an undercover cop. You're not a detective, right, where you're coming after the fact to figure things out, or you're operating under some type of guise to get people to buy into a role that you're playing. I'm talking about street cops in uniform, right? You're a social, that's a social job, first and foremost, right? And if you don't know how to be social, then you shouldn't have that job, right? Try and go be a detective, go be undercover, go do something else, but you do not need to be on the streets. A little backstory about this. So I have multiple family in law enforcement, just so we understand. I have a tradition of law enforcement in my family. I have blue blood in my veins. My father was a deputy state police at one point when that was still allowed, where you could be deputized in the state of Illinois. You can either look at crime two ways. You can either look at crime as breaking the law, as a sign of breaking the law. crime is breaking the law. You can look at it that way. Or you can look at crime as a sign of a lack of services. And depending on how you look at crime will dictate how you look at policing. If you look at crime as simply being a breaking of the law, here's break these, that's crime, and that's it. If you look at it as crime as being a sign of a lack of services, then things start to change very drastically, very dramatically. Things get very objective very quickly, right? You have to have a certain level of nuance and a certain level of understanding, but you can identify what's happening, right? Some people commit crime because they're bored. Or if you're bored, it means you have nothing to do. And potentially it might be that you lack certain services in your community that give you something to do, to give you a pastime, right? Something to spend your time with, right? America can be a very boring place, right? Once you start leaving the cities and you start to go into these different places or you go into different neighborhoods, it's boring, right? There's no stimulation. There's no aesthetic stimulation. There has been no education to appreciate just nature in and of itself. And this is important when we go back to what happened in Central Park, right? There's no real systems to teach you to enjoy the minor things in life and either the major things in life. And you're not presented with any type of aesthetic challenge. There's nothing that cognitively challenges you. It is all made very easy and convenient. You have a bunch of convenience stores in your neighborhood, but not a bunch of gardens or things that require a certain level of input. So it can get boring. The hood is boring. Right? That's why you have certain people who are trained in certain disciplines or have certain appreciations. They're getting out of the hood, not because they're scared, right? They might be the most gangster dude of all time or gangster female of all time. It's because it's boring. And the things that you have to do, right? It's music and there's other things like, yeah, but overall, this is just kind of band-aids on the overall boredom. And some people in that boredom, in addition to poverty, which we'll get into, but in addition to the boredom as a main driver, a very basic driver of why people will commit a crime, and you could tack it to where there's a lack of things to do. How often do they say these kids join gangs because there's nothing to do? There's no after school program. There's no this. There's no that. And what are a lot of approaches to try and solve that? If people implement these programs, these after school programs, or let's build a gym, or let's do this, or let's get the kids involved in boxing, let's do all these different kind of activities, right? Services, right? And to deter people from committing crime out of boredom. Poverty, people commit crime out of poverty because they're in need. They need something, right? I need food, right? I need to pay my bills. I need. In the face of a lack of services, lack of meaningful employment, right? Lack of some type of communal efforts to handle the financial affairs of people in certain vicinities, in certain places, right? There's no catch-all mechanisms, right? To help people who aren't able to pay a bill or be late on something or to groceries or something in that capacity, right? There's a lack of a service to help provide that. And then the services that are there, things like welfare, some of them aren't dignified, right? It's not a dignified existence, right? You have a whole community of people, black, white, whatever, who look down on that, right? Who want to provide the service with a caveat, right? With a certain level of, because I'm giving you this to help you, now you got to do what I say do. You have to behave in a certain way. You have to buy a certain thing. You have to live by a certain set of rules. So you're not really giving them a service, right? Services are no strings attached. So what you're really giving them is subserviency. You're not giving them service. You're giving them subserviency, right? They have to submit to your will, right? Which unravels and undoes the whole point of it, right? There are some people like, I don't want to be on welfare because I don't want somebody giving me something because they're going to look down on me, right? So you're basically just trapped in this same cycle, right? And then there's a plethora of other things underneath that as to why people commit crimes that you can tag to a lack of services. And if you really just invested in the services, right? If you gave the services a certain dignity then you would eliminate a lot of people's points of views, right? You eliminate a lot of the incentivizations for people to get involved in the life of crime, where you wouldn't need police to be there in the first place, right? So it's at the fundamentals, the roots. How did I come upon this kind of understanding, right? It's always good to play in metaphor. I am a metaphorist. I am a lyricist. I play in metaphor. I was born into metaphor. I have an understanding of metaphor. I made my money off metaphor. My career is based on metaphor. So I have a thorough understanding of allegory, metaphor, mapping certain instances onto other instances to find a certain level of meaning or for a certain level of analysis to get into the details. So I want to take y'all back to a nice, fun story that kind of proves this out. This idea of the fundamentals and how you look at something. If you look at crime as being breaking the law, that'll lead you down one path. If you look at crime as being a lack of services, it tends to send you down another path, right? So some of y'all know back a few years ago, I got the opportunity to play a very highly competitive game of Street Fighter. Street Fighter is a video game. It's a fighting game. And I've been playing Street Fighter since my first introduction to it was I was probably in kindergarten or the early years of my school. And there was a store the corner store up the street from the school that I went to. It's just like a block away. And before school would start, we would line up outside. But you had the opportunity, if you had some change, to go to the corner store and get some cookies or whatever for whatever, right? Some candy, whatever. And they had arcade machines in there. And one of the machines that they had was Street Fighter 2. And I remember just being blown away, like just watching players. Like, oh, you could just sit there and watch the game, just play. If you didn't even have any money, it was just to sit there and look at it and, like, wow, that's great. In addition to being a martial artist, right? So it's fighting, it's martial arts. Like, oh, he's doing kicks, he's throwing punches. Like, oh man, he's got another black belt. This is great. So I started to play Street Fighter almost through my entire life, right? And I got good in certain areas on certain games. They come out with different versions. And, it's always something that's been with me. Like some people play chess, some people play basketball. Like I was like, I play video games and I play Street Fighter and I play these other games. But, I love me some Street Fighter. And we had various machines. In our karate school, we had an arcade machine of Street Fighter. So it's always been a part of me. And I've always like kind of tapped into it. I never knew how deep the competitive space of Street Fighter actually went. For me, I always just played video games just on the surface, right? I played video games as a metaphor, right? I play video games as just like, here's something that I can relate to. I just want the dude who throws the fireball and got the cool looking kicks. And, I don't really care about doing the combos or anything like that. I just want to throw a fireball and do this and do that. I was playing it for the metaphor, for the music, for the sounds, for the Hadouken, for the colors. I want this color uniform. I never understood that there was a whole other side to Street Fighter. So fast forward a few years, a lot of years, to about 2016, I think is when this took place. You come to find out like, oh, there's these video game tournaments. There's all these different players from different parts of the world who like really are really, really good at it. And it's like, oh, wow. And you find this one guy who's considered to be the king, right? He's doing things in Street Fighter when you look at it like this is amazing. It's impossible, right? I want to just look at this dude. I want to play like that dude. Like that dude is like the best. I want to be like him. And somebody asked me on Twitter, there's a video game competition called Evo. They hold it in Vegas. It's massive. It's the largest video game competition in the world, but it's for fighting games. And they bring in players from all over the world. And there was a moment, and Evo's been around for a decade or more. And there was early in Evo's history, there's something called Moment 37. Moment 37 is you have these two players, Justin Wong, who's American, and you have Daigo Umihara, who's from Japan. And Daigo Umihara, they're playing a version of Street Fighter Alpha or something like, Third Strike or something like that. And Daigo's getting beat. Justin's kind of getting the best of him. And he's kind of going in for the kill. And Daigo proceeds to do something called Moment 37. That's what they call it now. Where Justin Wong does this super move, and he goes and he does like all these kicks and all these punches. And even if you block, it still takes damage. And Daigo's damage was so low that even if he blocked just probably one of these hits or two, he was dead. But what Daigo does instead of blocking, he does something called parrying, right? And when you parry, you basically tap the joystick forward. When you block, you press back and you block. But when you parry, you press forward. So you got to lean into the attacks. Daigo parried every single strike. And not only did he parry every single strike on the ground, in the air, he was able to do his own super move and eventually killed Justin Wong. Shout out to Justin Wong, who's a good dude. And shout out to Daigo, who's a good dude. And killed him. And it was so mind-blowing that he did this, that it is still probably one of the top moments in all of video game history. Period. Right? This one move from this one player at this one tournament became the top. It really should go down as one of the top 10 sports moments of all time. Right? The top. From rope-a-dope to like up there with Muhammad Ali. Like that's how crazy it is. So fast forward, the people who run that tournament reached out to me on Twitter, just very casually. I'm talking mess about how I play Street Fighter. One of the managers of the tournament reached out to me and said, "Hey, Lupe, do you watch Evo?" And I said, "Yeah, but I only watch it to watch Daigo." Right? And he says, at the time he was working for, well, I think his name is Mark, man. But Mark, he was working, I think, for maybe not for Evo at that time when he hit me. Definitely now. But he was working for the joystick company that sponsors Daigo. And he said, "Hey, do you want to fight Daigo?" And I said, "Absolutely." Right? I would love to lose to this dude. It would be an honor just to lose to him. Right? That's like, hey, do you want to go 10 rounds? Do you want to go 30 seconds in the ring with Floyd Mayweather? Yes. Right? He has to wear the biggest gloves. He has to basically wrap pillows around his hands. But yes, I want to be able to say I boxed with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Yes. Do you want to play a 21 with Michael Jordan? Yes. I don't even play basketball, but yes. Do you want to go with Lionel Messi and just do a shoot around, a penalty kick with yes. Would you want to be the GOAT? Yes, I do. I don't care if I have to play. I don't know how to play. I'm going to learn how to play. And so what I did, I accepted the invitation, and I didn't know what game we were playing. I didn't know what version of Street Fighter we were playing. So I think I was on tour. I immediately went to the nearest GameStop or whatever and bought a PlayStation, bought the latest version of Street Fighter, and just started to play. Right? A game that I hated to play. Just practicing. I'm posting up my training methodology, and people are laughing at me. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna get killed." I'm watching Daigo's matches. I'm watching matches of other players. I'm watching documentaries, and I start to learn something. I learned that people like Daigo, people like Justin, people like Alex Valle, all these people who you may not have ever heard of, who are the Michael Jordans and the Scottie Pippens and the Kevin Garnetts and the Muhammad Alis of their sport, of their craft, playing Street Fighter, playing fighting games. These dudes, they're not playing the game. Right? You say, what? They're not playing the game. Right? The lowercase g game, lowercase GAME. They're not playing that. They're not playing Street Fighter. It's like, what is this? This is baffling, right? They're playing the game, capital G. They're not playing the metaphor, which is what I grew up playing, which is what I understood Street Fighter to be. This metaphor of martial arts and fireballs and colors and nice sound effects. And that's what I'm playing, and competing and beating someone and playing